House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 2. Things are getting a little bit crazy. We jump into a 6-month time jump and it's like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? Original Game of Thrones kind of did that. I don't know if it was like as long. I mean, it took them a few months to get from like point A to point B. In the meantime, we were also focusing on like these other characters, developing them while like others were kind of traveling. So it was really interesting to like see this huge, almost like gap in time between episodes just 1 and 2 alone. Not to say that like there was no precedent to doing it. I think that episode 1 really left us in a place where that was, you know, achievable and possible and, you know, completely believable, because it did not throw me off until like I heard about it at first. Like, oh, so when we first heard that Daemon was in Dragonstone for about 6 months, just kind of ruling over that area without any kind of, you know, governance, kicking back, just kind of doing his own thing. And I think they reinforced that later on where Rhaenyra was talking about her mom dying. And it's like, yeah, it's been 6 months and father has hardly said a word to me. So I mean, that's not good for the king and his relationship with his daughter. And he's like, I don't want to make her feel estranged. Well, maybe you should have talked to her in those 6 months. I understand like you both are kind of grieving, but like one thing that I really appreciated about this episode was that we took a step back from the character of Daemon. The show really focused on him a lot in the first episode. And it's like, yeah, he's causing all of these problems. But now we are finally getting some character development on the King's Council. I said in my last video, like, that's like the only thing that was really kind of like taking away from the first episode for me. And now we're getting that right away in the second episode with both Otto and I believe his name is Corlys. Forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. I'm just now getting Rhaenyra right. Rhaenyra, right? So you can absolutely tell that Corlys and his wife, I think Rhaenys? Gosh, I'm so terrible with these names. The Queen Who Never Was. We get a lot of those two characters just kind of like standing over to the side, leering. We're a little bit upset over here about what's going on. We don't really think it's fair. Throughout the whole episode, they're kind of like weaseling their way into the king's life by trying to pawn off their 12-year-old daughter to marry the king. It's just really weird. That scene where Viserys is walking down the path with, I believe her name is Lena, Corlys and Rhaenys' daughter, her and Viserys walking, Viserys like just mentally thinking in his head like, am I actually gonna do this? No. And so what's funny about that is like, he's the only one who's like, I don't want to do this. No. And then everyone else is like, no, we understand. You have to do it. You're the king. This is like your obligation. Even Rhaenyra was like, Dad, you need to do this. Like, this is not about you or me. This is about maintaining like the family legacy. This is about ensuring a new heir, even if Rhaenyra is not. It's just such like a really awkward situation. I mean, even to like act that out on camera, I could not imagine being on like set that day filming that scene. The actors in the show are just absolutely incredible for making everything feel so like realistic and just so well made within this universe that is Game of Thrones. The fact that Corlys was like willing to pawn off his own daughter just to kind of like secure some kind of position, it really makes me dislike the character, although his acting is also just very phenomenal. The guy who plays Corlys, like when he's on screen and you know it. I mean, like he just kind of like dominates a lot of the conversations. And I also feel like a lot of the plot is being set up around him with like the pirates. I forgot the guy's name, but I think he's called like the Crab Feeder. And the Crab Feeder, he's like capturing Westerosi ships and he's feeding the crews to crabs. So I guess that makes sense why he's called the Crab Feeder. The episode actually opened up with the Crab Feeder and a lot of really just gruesome imagery of crabs ripping away at people and literally eating them and coming in and out of skulls like through the eye sockets. I had just eaten dinner right before watching this episode, so next time for sure I'll be sure to eat after. Don't eat anything before watching House of the Dragon. I forgot that rule when watching Game of Thrones. I remember actually like making sure like I wouldn't eat anything just so like my stomach didn't get upset at some of the more gruesome scenes. Relearning that has just been a pleasure. And then we also end off the episode with the Crab Feeder, and I think, is that his face or is it like a mask? It looks like something is like melted or like merged into his face. The guy looks really messed up. Meanwhile, Otto is off pawning his own daughter to the king. His daughter being the best friend to Rhaenyra. That's not gonna cause any issues. I really do feel like Alicent is one of like the more pure characters throughout the show, just helping the king fix his like little dragon sculpture and just being there for him, even though she has like a lot of other things that she might want to be doing with her own time. Alicent is just really like a really great person, and you can see why Rhaenyra is protective over her as much as she is. At the end, where the king is like, I'm gonna marry my daughter's best friend, Alicent, Hightower. Not to mention after the fact that Rhaenyra went to Dragonstone, confronted her uncle, who also, not to mention, is threatening the whole family and just like the whole status quo of literally everything in the show. Rhaenyra is just really like kicking butt and taking names, and she got back the egg without any bloodshed. I mean, like, I feel like Otto otherwise would have definitely perished. I mean, did they forget that they had a dragon? Just a quick note, we don't need any more characters just forgetting really crucial details. That doesn't make sense to the story. Just, yeah. I feel like Otto should have been expecting what was going to happen. I also want to point out the fact that when Rhaenyra showed up at Dragonstone, that whole scene gave me absolute chills, like the clouds kind of like forming and like you hear the noise of a dragon. It was Rhaenyra coming to the rescue and getting shit done. Rhaenyra is more of like the take charge, you know, I'm not going to plot, I'm going to be up front and I'm going to say what I want. And I just happen to respect that more than all of these other characters because they're all just kind of conniving, hiding behind others' backs. Rhaenyra hands down has them all beat in terms of being a better character. She's a more naive character and she has room to kind of grow into a more strategic and cunning kind of warrior. And I really hope the show utilizes her as like a really strong leader at some point down the line. I know that I was mentioning earlier about Corley's screen presence, but Rhaenyra, she just has like some kind of like magical charm to her. Like every time she's on screen, it's like, I could follow this girl into battle literally at any point, especially after that scene where she just shows up to Dragonstone. It was just so good. I loved it. I loved it. Rhaenys just absolutely needs to get her priorities straight because I really have no idea just how much longer Rhaenyra can handle her BS. Other than that, I mean, the king, he has to be, you know, sick with grayscale, right? I mean, I don't know what else that could be. You can tell that's being foreshadowed for sure. Like something important is going on there. And you can tell like in the last episode, he got his pinky cut and, you know, 6 months later, his finger is now rotting. If it were me, I would just go ahead and cut that off and just not worry about it spreading. Or I would just go ahead and get a new maester because this guy is clearly kind of just screwing everything up, you know, the cut on his back, his wife, and now this whole issue. I do not trust the maester. I think he's playing his own game. Maybe I'm overthinking, I'm overanalyzing, but I don't know. The maester just seems kind of sketchy to me. So we end the episode with Corlys and Daemon meeting up and it's like, ooh, it's this big surprise. Personally, I wasn't like too surprised at the fact. And then like the camera starts panning and it's like, boom, it's Daemon sitting in the chair. So Daemon and Corlys are definitely plotting something, you know, fighting with like the crab feeder, taking him out, taking that power back. Game of Thrones, House of the Dragons, season 1, episode 2. I thought it was probably just as good as the first episode. And I really think that it does enhance the first episode as well because we are now familiar with the King's Council. So I really feel like the rewatchability of the show is going to be that much better, especially once we get near to the end of the season. The show still has me like really engaged. I'm hooked. I'm really excited to be back with Game of Thrones. We're on week 2. I think there's going to be 8 more episodes, making for a total of 10 episodes. I think the character dynamics are really strong and that plays like a big pivotal part in like any story that I really like. I love seeing character growth and seeing like character journeys, especially in a world that feels just so rich and colorful and it's like anything could really happen at any point. Such as Rhaenyra being a complete badass and going straight to Dragonstone. I'm sorry, I keep mentioning that. That was probably like my favorite moment of the episode. Yeah, overall, just really good episode. What did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm excited for episode 3. I'm excited to see how this whole thing is going to end. So yeah, those are my overall thoughts on House of the Dragon, season 1, episode 2. I thought it was really fantastic and I cannot wait to see where this goes. Thank you guys again so much for watching the video. I really do appreciate you guys stopping by, watching the video, and I will go ahead and see you guys next week for episode 3.